Good morning, everybody. Sad to say that plans for digital identity are pushing ahead, even though it's disappeared from the mainstream media for now, because there's all other kinds of distractions going on and other big events. Obviously, the conflict in Ukraine is very real. It's very terrible for the people who live in Ukraine. But that means that people are not talking about the big plan for the Great Reset to bring in digital identity, not just in Ukraine, which, by the way, is one of the leading countries in trying to implement this, but all around the world. In the UK, of course, where I am, the government tried to introduce vaccine passports last year, which were called the NHS COVID app, and they put in place these terrible, repugnant regulations, which were no jab, no job regulations. So if you worked in a care home, they were the first victims of this, and they were told if you don't have an injection and can prove it on a digital identity pass, then you'd be out of a job. And then they tried to bring that in for doctors and nurses as well. But there was huge pushback here in the UK. And they haven't implemented it. They've rolled back from it from the time being because people were waking up to this, and there was mass non-compliance and lots of protests on the street in support of 100,000 nurses and doctors who would have lost their job, which would have been absolutely appalling that the government here, the Johnson regime, even thought of doing that. And of course, in Canada, you have the Trudeau regime, which is even worse, bringing in no jab, no job regulations for truckers, and then the wonderful, heroic truckers in Canada going out on the streets of Ottawa for 3 weeks to protest that. And they've rowed back some of the things in Canada, but there's still some terrible things going on there. I'd still believe Canada's one of the places you can't leave the country unless you've got injected 3 times and can prove that on a digital identity app. So Canada is one of the worst countries there for pushing this through. But surprisingly, Ukraine was a leader in this. Last year, they introduced an app which was called a DIA, D-I-I-A. I don't know what that means in Ukrainian, but it was an app that combined digital identity, vaccine status, and universal basic income. And they were bribing people to get this by offering them the equivalent of £25, 35 US dollars, to get this app. And if you got it, they would deposit that on your digital identity wallet. And your wallet would be essentially the central bank digital currency that the World Economic Forum and BlackRock, the big investment company that owns shares in just about everything around the world, wants to bring in. And they want to bring this in for corporate control, corporate surveillance of every citizen, and micromanagement of every person's financial affairs. So you have no privacy in how you spend your money. At the moment, we have cash, and you can choose to use cash if you so wish. They're making it less easy for you to use cash, but you can still do it. And if you use cash, then your transactions and your trades are private, unless someone is physically filming you, which they're probably not doing all the time. Then you can buy and sell whatever you like privately. You still have some degree of privacy in trading in cash. The idea of the future is to completely get rid of cash totally and replace it with programmable central bank digital currencies. And most countries, Western countries at least, have got these agencies now set up called digital transformation agencies and units and so on. Ukraine has actually got a minister in the government called the Digital Transformation Minister. which is quite sinister. Before, I'm used to having ministers that have a specific remit for something real, like transport or health or education or foreign affairs or defense, but not digital transformation. This is something that's new, but this is how governments are now aligning to the World Economic Forum's agenda. The Sustainable Development Goals agenda, which again is to create a controlled digital currency connected to the 5G network, which is springing up everywhere all over the world. So we need to say no to this central bank digital currency, particularly as it will be programmable. And what that means is that we'll have some aspects that are very similar to the Chinese Communist Party's style social credit system. So if you have a good social credit, you can spend your money on whatever you like. But if the state decides that you've been a naughty boy or a naughty girl and you have the wrong opinions, or you've been looking at the wrong sites, or you've posted something that is different to the government narrative that they don't like, say for example you say that there are two sexes, male and female, which is true. But that goes against the Orwellian government agenda that says, 2 fingers is 5 fingers, for example. Try to get you to actually comply and they compel you to say things that are not true. And you may decide to say, I'm just not going to say this nonsense, and then your social credit score will go down because you are not complying with what the government wants to you to say, to control your mind and to control your soul, basically, by forcing you to say things which are not true, forcing you to acknowledge things which are wrong, or even if you say things that are good, which go against the agenda, then your social credit score will go down. And then with the digital identity, and that will be connected to universal basic income, you won't get your universal basic income. You will miss your payments, and then the government will turn off your wallet for a certain amount of time, or for certain things. So they may say, if you've been a little bit of a naughty boy, oh well, you won't be able to get some plane tickets for the next 2 weeks. But if you've been a really bad naughty boy or naughty girl, then they may say, well, you can't use your wallet at all to buy or sell anything for, say, 6 months. And then you're really stuck. Then you are basically going to starve, and you'll be kicked out of your house, and you'll be homeless, and then you'll probably be picked up off the street and deposited in some concentration camp somewhere. That is the future that the World Economic Forum have envisaged for us. And that's not beyond the imagination of where it's going, because that's what's happening in China right now. And that's what some psychopaths want to bring in all over the world. And how they're doing it at the moment is destroying the West's economy. And the crisis conflict in Ukraine has been an opportunity for the people who are inside the West to do things that are having a worse negative effect on the West than it is on other countries. And I'm talking about the sanctions on Russia, which are balmy and backfiring on ordinary, normal people, because they haven't hurt Russia. Russia's currency went down immediately, but it's climbed up right again to where it was before. Russia has commodities, it has oil, it has gas, it has fertilizer, food. But they've said the West is not going to be able to buy those things unless they purchase them in rubles, and we are going to be at the back of the queue for purchases of food, fertilizer, etc., because they're going to prefer to sell them to India and China, because the West is full of people embedded in governments who have been using Ukraine for their own personal financial interests of their families and to militarize Ukraine, which makes lots of money for the US-based and UK-based military industrial complex. But it has no benefit whatsoever to the ordinary people of Britain, America, Canada, Ukraine, Russia, or wherever. So, but this is going on now. And of course, we have massive inflation in the West because this comes on the back of decades of terrible government policy, not being responsible with the money, spending more than we have every single year for the last 40 years, apart from 1 year, and then with the 2 years of COVID in the UK, an extra £500 billion of quantitative easing. That's obviously baking in another 25% inflation into the system. Now you have the increase in prices because of the ridiculous energy policies that we have based on climate alarmism. So we're getting rid of cheap, useful, reliable fossil fuels for energy, something that works, and we've had for 100 years, coal, oil, gas. It works, it's cheap, it's pretty clean, it does the job, it keeps our country going, it keeps our economy going. So what does our government do? We're going to switch that all off. We're going to get rid of what works, dismantle the infrastructure of what works, and build a new infrastructure that doesn't work. So we're going to try to rely on windmills and solar panels for our energy, and we're going to have to make it up because that doesn't work. We're going to have to make up the energy deficit by buying energy in from Russia or Saudi Arabia or wherever, or Qatar. And of course, they're going to put the prices up for us in the West, which is going to cause more inflation, which is going to crash the economy even faster. And then the World Economic Forum will try to use that opportunity to bring in the Great Reset with central bank digital currencies and a total control system over everyone's finances. We can't let that happen. So what we need to do is keep on using cash, and we need to resist any coercion, whether it's positive, like a bribe, a reward to, get this digital currency. If the government says, oh, you get this digital currency identity, we're going to give you 500 quid, resist it, because it's not going to be worth it in the long term. Or any negative coercion that says, oh, if you don't have this, then you're not going to be able to do this, and we're going to take away your job, or we're going to take away your ability to buy stuff. At that point, we need millions of people just to say no. And just like what they tried to do with the no jab, no job regulations for nurses and doctors, enough people said no that they backed down and they didn't implement it, and they got rid of the regulation. So when it comes, and it will come at some point, I don't know whether it will be this year or next year or the year after, at some point, the Johnson regime, the Biden regime, the Trudeau regime, the Ardern regime, Macron regime, all these countries in the West are going to say, if you don't get a digital wallet with a central bank digital currency, then you will suffer. You will not be able to purchase certain things, and you will not be able to go to work, or you'll not be able to go to school, or you'll not be able to go to a shopping mall, whatever. They're going to do that at some point. At that point, get ready. We need mass, peaceful non-compliance once again. And then their Great Reset will fall. And they know they haven't got much time to do it, which is why they're doing everything to stoke up chaos and crash Western economies and crash Western countries. Because to bring in the Great Reset, they've got to destroy the economies of the West. And look what's happening with the Ukraine situation. It's had a far, far worse effect on Western economies than it has on the Russian economy or the Chinese economy. So this is whatever you think about, Putin's motivation, Zelensky's motivation, all of these things, there are things going on that are wider and bigger than the Ukraine conflict, which is either part of the plan or it's being used as an opportunity to continue the crash of Western societies and civilization. And what we need to do is rediscover our heritage, which is good, and it's positive, and it's a benefit and a blessing to the world. But to find that heritage, you got to go back now quite a long time in history. You got to go back to perhaps the 1950s and beforehand, because our heritage has been actively and purposefully corroded and attacked for decades and decades and decades now. I talk about cultural Marxism, I have done for a long time, and that's the attack on the culture, the cultural superstructure that Gramsci talked about, that has to be attacked and dismantled before then you can get to the economic substructure, the foundations, and then destroy that. So what's happened now is the cultural superstructure has been pretty much destroyed and corroded. And so now you have the powers that be attacking the economic substructure of the West and destroying the economy, the foundations of the economy and business and that side of society. And we have to be aware of that, and we have to resist the attacks on it. And that means continuing to use cash and being strong when they try to coerce you into acting to do something that will destroy our civilization and economy even more and incompletely. So, sorry, I'm not being very positive today, but we need to know and understand what's going on. And then get ready for it, and then we can do something different, and we can rediscover our heritage and rebuild it without all of these charlatans who are now in places of power in the West. And I look forward to the day where they'll all be gone. Okay, please do subscribe to my channel. You can do that below. Please do join me in the Heritage Party for political resistance in the UK. And if you're in other countries, obviously you've got Maxime Bernier, PPC in Canada, for example. You've got the AFD in Germany. So, other countries like that are resisting as well. So that's great. Anyway, God bless you all. Thank you. And I hope you have a good day. Bye.